If you want to grow your business, fail fast or your business will die slowly. I run tests, I make mistakes, and I move on quickly until I find what works. Here's how to know how much to test before you've gone too far. So the question of how fast can you move, how many experiments can you do before your team gets whiplash is a good one. It is quite possible for you to have all these ideas. And as the entrepreneur, as a founder, I can't tell you how many ideas I have in a day that all get written down. And I want to move forward on all of them all the time. And if I did, then I would overwhelm my team completely. You might be guilty of this. You go to like a networking event and you hear like a bunch of good ideas and you come back and you tell your team and there's just like this torrent of ideas. We should do this and we should do this and we should do this. And they're looking at you like a deer in the headlights because it's like my plate is already full. And now a whole bunch of ill-defined crap has been dumped on me and I don't know what to do with this. That is very typical. It's the entrepreneurial ADD. A lot of us have it. It's how we got to a business that started in the first place. We tried a bunch of, some of it worked, and we discarded some of it that wasn't working as well. And then what was left was the stuff that worked well enough to start a business. That's not where your team is coming from. Your team is coming from a place of wanting stability and certainty and know what the organization is heading towards. And when you start lobbing in these like idea grenades in there, it upsets their equilibrium. So how do you deal with that? How do you scratch your itch for new ideas and also get good ideas in there, but not make the team go crazy? It goes back to having a process for a learning organization, a team that understands that we're going to do experiments. So I'll give you an example about a very concrete example about how I do it in one of my companies, which is that there is a monthly creative testing meeting. And what we do is we gather up all the ideas, and you're allowed to have an idea at any time you want. On the Slack channel, we'll tag it as an idea, and it just goes into a bucket. So those of us who are really excited by ideas can see the idea and get the immediate like fix of idea. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. But we all know we're not allowed to do something with it because there's that cooling off period where it all gets gathered up. And then on a monthly basis, we look at all of the ideas, and then we do that judgment of how much investment will this idea take? What's the potential return? And then we can compare it against all the other ideas. And then we can say, okay, we're looking at what our goals are right now for this quarter, for this year, for this 5-year period. What are we trying to achieve? Which of these are the best bets to go in a certain direction? So as an entrepreneur, for me, it's really hard. So last week, I had an idea, which I, of course, in the moment, am convinced that this is going to double the business. And I want to, if it was just me in the organization, what would I do? I'd stay up until 4 a.m. and just like bang this thing out. I also know that if I do that, I'm going to completely and utterly upset the apple cart with everyone else because my paid media guy is going to be like, what the fuck is this? Like the ads aren't consistent with this. My chief of staff is going to be like, well, I rigged all of these other things towards our existing campaigns and structures. Now I've got to do another thing. I will introduce so much instability into the organization. So instead, with that midnight idea that I got obsessed with, 4 a.m. idea, I get up, I write it up, put it in a Slack channel, tag it as an idea, and now there's a place and time in the calendar that I know it will be evaluated when I'm not so hot and bothered about it. And the team who participates in that, so leadership who participates in that, can look at it and actually poke holes at it because we're now not just looking at it in a vacuum. It's not just the idea du jour. It is looked at in comparison to all of the other things we could be doing, including not doing anything different, because the answer could be none of these ideas are better than the things we're doing now. By creating that organizational structure, I at least have found that it's a really good limiter on me to not upset the organization. And it lets the team say, hey, we're testing things. We're always trying new things. But I understand how it's going to be introduced into the organization in a way that it's going to make me meet my objectives as a team member better, because we want the company to succeed and I have objectives. And that way, if my customer support person says, oh yeah, you're going to do this, but I'm going to get overwhelmed by new tickets because of this thing. Okay, well, she needs to meet her objective and she has an opportunity to raise her concern before this becomes a plan. So that's how I think about not upsetting the apple cart and just constantly throwing in new idea grenades. The team members get bought in when you use a process like this. That's an important part, going back to the concept of ownership of their role, of autonomy and feeling like they have autonomy in their role. They feel that they can advocate for themselves and give feedback because they know that they own it and no one else is watching over this role to say, oh, and this will affect Farah and my team because X. No, Farah can come to the table and say, okay, well, if this is going to happen, here's the result. This is going to affect this, and I've got this number I'm looking for, and I don't know if I can meet my ticket response times if this change happens. So she can advocate for herself. And it becomes really empowering instead of Raj, did this seagull management and flew over the table, crapped an idea on there, and everyone's just like, well, I don't know how I'm going to meet my objectives. How am I going to be successful? Instead, everyone is able to say, well, here's where we want to go, and maybe some of the roles will have to change. Maybe I'm going to have to say, you know what, your ticket response times, I get it. There's going to be some slack on that when we're trying it, because I understand that you may get overwhelmed with a whole bunch of new customer inquiries about this. But it allows the team member to self-determine much more and really feel ownership of the role and advocate for themselves. And that, to me, is a way of giving them some feeling of agency so that they don't feel like they're just doing a job, showing up in a factory and told to stamp this part again and again. Instead, they're thinking, it's like, oh, okay, well, they want to change the production line. Well, how would that actually work? And what effect might that have? So the best ideas from the ground up percolate upward, and maybe that's information that will cause you to challenge whether or not this is actually a good idea. There might be operational things you haven't thought of. There might be an impact to the lifetime value of a recurring subscription customer because you changed something on how that customer came into your world, right? So I'm a marketing junkie. So a lot of these stuff are marketing campaigns. But well, if I change how they're coming into our world, maybe they won't stick around as long. Or maybe they'll be less happy. And that could infect what we get in terms of reviews. And we're going to go down from 4.9 stars to 4.6 stars on average. That might impact future sales. I might not think of all of these things. And thinking that I have all the answers when I just got excited about an idea is really poor thinking. When you do this, you can burn out your team. And I've crossed that line many times. That's why I developed a 7-step system to simplify team management. And you can watch that in the next video right here.